So,
All right, here we go.
So,
Welcome. We will get started then.
well, give me a minute. It's just booting up right now. And
Okay. Great. Looks like it's on, Tom.
okay.
All right. Oh, we lost Tom.
Yep.
I'm just gonna wait for Tom to get back before we get started with the first thing on the agenda.
Winds are really strong at the beach. We had a little power outage an hour or two ago.
Oh, did you
Well,
really?
that's
Will?
probably why my generator went off.
Wow.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
exactly.
Well, actually, this will all be recorded, so if Tom can pick some of this up in the notes. The first item on the agenda is just approval of the meeting minutes, which I think Tom had circulated. Does anybody
So
want to
moved.
make a motion?
So
Seconded.
moved.
All right, so
Seconded.
that's-
am I a voting member of this committee or am I just a liaison?
You are not just the liaison, Jean Marie, but you are the liaison and not a voting member.
Okay, just checking. I can never remember from committee to committee.
I hate to say just, you know. All right, Tom, we're voting on the approval of the minutes. Bill made the motion. Dick seconded the motion. And all right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. It's unanimous. The meeting's minutes are approved. Next on the agenda, to discuss the meeting date and time. Last time we were all together, we talked about rescheduling the meeting to a different time. You know, I think part of what we were talking about was doing it during the day rather than at night. This kind of came back, you know, for me, I'm going to be away for all of these meetings for the foreseeable future. So I'll be doing it live from these hotel rooms if we do these at, at night on the third Thursday or Wednesday. So I don't know if there's a better time for folks that consistently is good for everybody, or if we ought to just stick with this. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Yeah, kind of keeping in mind that it is useful to be kind of in sync with the council and what their schedule is.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have council meetings the first and third Wednesday of every month.
So are we doing one meeting a month?
Yeah.
then? Does anybody want it earlier? Doesn't matter to me. Wednesday works well for me. Tuesdays, I'm open even in the afternoon.
Brian,
I do it earlier.
Brian, you have some work commitments this third Wednesday of the month, right?
Yeah, I'll be traveling just about on Wednesday, the third Wednesday of the month, pretty consistently. So unless we did it in the morning on the third Wednesday of the month, it would be tough for me. Or if we kept doing it like this, I would be able to attend remotely.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think remote attendance is fine. I don't think there's anything lost if that's acceptable to you, Brian.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Well, if you are, I think I would propose that you stay with this third Wednesday of the month. I think it just works best with the council schedule and such.
Okay.
You can.
Yeah.
All right.
If you want to do it at 5 o'clock, I've got a stay. How about you?
The council frequently has workshops that start at like 5:30.
Well, I shouldn't say that. What is today? It's not the third Wednesday. It's
No, it's not. I was going to say, why are you looking at the third Wednesday?
I had it on my brain. Was this the fourth Wednesday?
Today's the fourth.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, the fourth Wednesday is the meeting date.
Yeah. Yeah, so we stick with the fourth Wednesday of the month.
Does anyone mind doing it at 5 instead of 6?
I don't care.
Doesn't
That-
matter
that-
to me.
That would work for me.
I'd prefer that. I get home earlier.
There you go.
Yeah,
Michaela, how about you? Does that work for you?
I'm pretty flexible, so as long as I know in advance.
All right.
I know that feeling.
So let's do them at 5.
All right. So there it is.
So the next meeting's March 24th at 5 o'clock.
Yep.
Okay.
Terrific. Great. Thanks, you guys. On to our next agenda item, which is titled Workforce Housing Efforts. And it's two things under this. The first piece is going to be to finalize a proposed definition for workforce housing. And then I just want to talk quickly about a new Maine housing program. Michaela, could you lead the discussion on finalizing the definition based on the work that you've done with some people?
Yeah, it's actually funny. I had a lender over at Town and Country. I was just curious about seeing some updated, just kind of like buyer worksheets and cost analysis and stuff, since we know the rates are starting to go up, which affects how much people can afford. I still feel like the ranges that we had, obviously keeping them wider is probably best to start. You can change that if you need to, but she just sent it to me. I don't know if there's any way I can try and circulate it out in an email to everybody right now. If I just gotta save it to my computer, and we'll get that out there just so you can at least see it. I think it's
Well, we
helpful.
could, can we share a document? Who's in charge of the?
Should have screen sharing abilities if you wish, Michaela.
Yeah, let me see if I can figure this out. She literally just sent it to me. She's been right out straight. Let's see.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Do you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is what she just sent over to me. It's in the way here.
Incidentally, Michaela, who is this at Town and Country?
So this is Chelsea Torrey over at Town and Country. She's one of their lenders over there.
Yep.
She works out of the South Portland branch, but she's very familiar with a lot of the projects going on in Scarborough and that. So it looks like the interest rate right now for a conventional loan is about 4.25, which is definitely higher than what we've been seeing.
Mhm.
So it looks like, I'm just looking to see. So at a purchase price of $350,000, she's got the breakdown in the bottom right corner, so you can see cash to close from the borrower, about $20,000. Your total monthly payment on average is anywhere from $2,200 to $2,300 a month. So just the ballpark. She said she was going to work on a couple different price points so you could at least see it, which I'm sure she's going to be rapid firing off the next few minutes here. But and I'll circulate that out just in an email after.
Yeah, and that assumes that this person has 20,000 to put down.
Yes, correct.
Who the heck has that as a first time buyer?
I don't know, Jean Marie, that's not bad for a $400,000 house. I mean,
No.
Yeah, but Brian, there aren't any out there. I got news for you.
So the more reading into this, I think the biggest thing, and actually it was really interesting in over at Town and Country too, because obviously she has a lot of people that come in, they've had accounts with Town and Country, and she sees a lot of first-time home buyers. She said in the past year, she's only done, I think it was 5 or 6 of the rural development loans, which is 0% financing.
Right.
So a lot of times people are having to put 5 to 10% down to even have a shot.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is probably going to be incentivizing developers to want to build projects for this. I think you're going to have a lot harder time right now. Maybe it's different in a year or two. We don't really have any control over that. But having other builders want to do projects like this is going to be a much easier and I think much more successful kind of route than just.
And that state committee, they're putting out, or did they just put? I forget what I read and see, but anyway, What they're working at as far as affordable and workforce housing, when I spoke to them, I spoke about developer incentives. And they kind of look at me cross-eyed, sort of, because they didn't want to give money, so to speak. And I know what they're working on is zoning, stopping exclusionary zoning, letting them build 800 units like they do down in Fort Myers. I'm being a little funny there because they would freak out if anyone did that. But they're looking at it more like land use and whatever than actual incentives to developers. Now, Main State Housing may come back in. I know I bought my first house back thousands of years ago with the very first Main State Housing that was ever issued. That was back when interest rates were 18%, Michaela. 1982, baby.
The good old days.
And I was fortunate enough to get a Main State Housing loan. And I'm wondering if that's going to be playing a part again as rates go up, programs like that, because there's less money down, et cetera, et cetera. But people have got to get creative with what's going on. Scarborough does not have any affordable housing other than what's being developed as affordable housing.
So Jean Marie, just to focus the conversation though, this is the conversation about workforce housing.
Well, that's where I'm going next because I am this workforce housing.
Yeah, and to define the workforce housing. So I just want to kind of bring it back to that.
It's all I remember. I'm terrible with numbers, but I have them right in front of me. But it's a family of four with an income of up to 120,000 is the top for Cumberland County. That number I remember.
Well, yeah, and so that's what we're talking about now, though. So is what our definition will be, or what we'll propose town council adopt as a definition.
Right, exactly. I mean, we might as well, because every Portland's got that. I think South Portland's got that. So why would we be any different?
Well, and so that's what Michaela's talking about now, though. She's kind of walking through the work.
I know,
that she's
but
been doing.
No, I know. So I'll just shut up for a moment, but I'm still hammering this because there ain't any. Okay, so go on.
That's
Scarborough.
Two different conversations we're having right now, but I think everybody seems to be pretty comfortable with the 80 to 120% average medium income ratio that we have right now. I mean, there's no need to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
So.
Right.
Brian, I wonder if in an interest to kind of move this forward, I'll say I think there's a bit of urgency. We have this workforce housing identified in our ordinances, but we don't have it defined. And so I think we're in a bit of a perilous position until we do. Could we be so bold, based on Michaela's recommendation and this discussion, to put a draft together that very closely follows the existing definition, but for the different range of income?
I think that we can be that bold, Tom. Would somebody like to make a motion or an authorizing motion? Or Bill Donovan, you're great at motions. Would you please make an appropriate motion that would get us to that point?
Taking the affordable housing definition and substituting 80% to 120% range for a workforce housing definition.
Yeah.
So moved.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Right. Any discussion?
No, I'm happy to have that. That's what we need.
Great.
As a practical matter, what I'll do, I think we all know what we're talking about. I'll do the drafting. I'll circulate it for kind of your review remotely, if you will, just by email. But again, I'll use the existing definition very closely, but for those income ranges. And Jean Marie, we can advance this, probably not the March 2 meeting, but the March 16 meeting.
Yeah, the sooner the better.
Good.
Because we do have a project that developer is proposing that will be workforce housing rentals.
Yeah, and then
So I'd
just,
like to see a definition done sooner rather than later.
yeah, so first of all, let's just vote on that really quickly. You all in favor?
Yep.
Aye.
I,
See, that is unanimous. Thank you.
And then just for clarity, could everybody just affirm that we're all talking about both ownership and rental housing when we're talking?
Yes.
correct.
I got a head nod on that. All right, great.
Yep.
Terrific. Wonderful. So before we get to the new main housing program, just Michaela, while you were going through that set of costs, this could be a discussion now or some point in the future. It strikes me that houses are expensive to build. Developers are tough to incentivize.
Mhm.
And I wonder if we might think about developing some sort of program to bring existing houses into some sort of workforce program. And what I mean by that is, if somebody were able to buy an existing house that were to qualify, somehow creating a program that would, allow it to be deed restricted in some way and qualify as a workforce house. And what that might look like to just kind of build some inventory of protected workforce housing from the existing housing stock rather than relying on new construction.
How does that work practically?
Yeah.
Who
Well,
agrees to do that?
I don't know. I think we do some brainstorming, but it might look something like an acquisition and rehab program
Okay.
where if a purchase of a home that fit within a certain cost, could meet some physical standards, and we could give people a certain amount of loan to do some work on the house or something. That house would then be deed restricted to be workforce housing,
Who's doing the
just like
acquiring?
a new home would be if it were in a workforce housing program.
But why would the seller choose to do that?
The buyer might choose to do it in order to get access to the rehab funds.
But it's sold at market price?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, who's gonna fund it? What's the acquisition funding? And
Well, yeah.
I think one of the things that we probably should do is we need to do an inventory of what's out there, which is not much, and to see how much housing is currently on the market in Scarborough that even meets workforce. Definitely, would fit into
Yeah.
what we call workforce. Can a person making the workforce definition afford to buy any of them?
Yeah. So like, let's say there's a house for sale for whatever the magic number is.
Yeah, we need that magic number.
Let's pretend that the magic number is $300,000.
Oh, Jesus, are you kidding?
No, let's pretend. If today there's a house for sale for that magic number of $300,000,
Mhm.
and we could somehow get it in the program to make sure that it will always sell for a level that is affordable to people who qualify for workforce housing, that could be a win for the town. To really build up an inventory of protected housing.
That might be a tough sell, but in talking with the town and country lender today, she mentioned this development in Gorham that I actually had never heard of. I don't know if anybody else has here, but it was called Hawks Farm. And it was basically a bunch of houseominiums that was designated towards affordable housing. And I was trying to look into it this afternoon and it got a little crazy, but I thought I'd throw that out there.
Affordable? I'm
Yeah.
sorry, affordable or workforce? Because there's a difference.
Yeah, I don't know. She just basically started talking about different developments she's dealt with in the past, and she mentioned this one, and I hadn't heard of it before. As far as Scarborough goes right now, I mean, there's one house on the market, and it's a condo for $315,000. There's nothing else under $400,000 right now. Again, two different parallels there, but if you had some type of, and it's not going to be a one night sitting here where we come up with a grand idea for incentivizing, but I think that's your best bet, because it's not like you're going to get one in a blue moon, with this other stuff that you're talking about. You might be able to get a whole development. And obviously there's so much more to talk about at that point, but just in thinking, if that's the goal, not just getting one here and there, you know, you have like a mini development. I'm definitely going to look into that more though. It was kind of interesting what she was talking about.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's great. What's the name of that development, Michaela?
It was Hawks Farm in Gorham, and it was house-dominium. So they're standalone houses, but still condoized. She was saying that the developer, and I don't know if she personally knew the developer or not, but just that obviously there's a lot of legal work on the back end. So making that attractive for a developer to want to go through is tough, but doing the house-dominiums allowed them to do a lot more than typical single family houses. So just the thought.
Yeah.
I suspect the affordability comes from the land value or lack thereof.
Right.
Well, they're probably like down here in Florida, they don't like, isn't with Scarborough, the average size lot that you can build on?
3/4 of an acre?
Quarter of an acre, okay, we got, you know,
3/4, I don't know.
3/4 of an acre.
Yeah.
So down here, it's like 0.2 acres or
Right.
0.23. The houses are much closer together.
Yep.
Almost like Higgins Beach.
Well, it's density.
Yeah,
They've got
Yeah.
density. Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's part of the old suburban model that we're the poster child of, right? Forcing,
Right.
you know, we still have minimum lot size of 80,000 square feet in certain areas.
Mhm.
2-acre lots.
Yeah. And that was to defer the building on those properties, you know?
Yeah.
So if you did something like what Michaela was saying, smaller lots, less sprawl, you can, you know, your costs are gonna go down. Unfortunately, the cost of materials right now is
Right.
through the roof. It's crazy.
Is it naive to think that as interest rates rise and purchasing power goes down, that the developing community will respond by building to a lesser price point? I mean, I know there's many other factors, but at the end of the day, they need someone to buy their product.
Right.
I think if you had enough incentives in there and that was kind of the market that we were looking at, I think that's definitely a possibility.
Yeah. But I think that's a few years down the road. Jean Marie, how would you say you have more cash buyers than you've had in the past?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if not totally cash, they've got 50% to put
Yeah,
down.
that's
Or whatever. Yeah.
Where's that cash come from?
Parents. I have first-time home buyers whose parents are gifting them chunks of change.
that's what I did with my kids.
Yeah, I
You know,
mean,
get them into
it's
a
the
house.
only way it's the only way they can get in this market.
Exactly.
The other
But
dynamic
but
is
not everyone has parents who have that sort of wherewithal.
Right.
the other dynamic is that with remote working, you know, people who, you know, are from New York or Boston can move up here where things that feel expensive to us are cheap to them,
Yeah.
and they can work anywhere. They can work
Exactly, Brian.
on the table.
And actually, I had a client from Boston not too long ago who was like, "What the heck? You guys have the same prices as we do in Boston now." And I'm like, "Well, what do you
You
want?"
cost it.
You get a lot
Hey,
more
Mark.
house fun,
Marge is here.
also in Florida.
Yeah, but my camera doesn't seem to want to work. I had to end up coming in on my phone.
Hey, Marge.
Well, we hear you just fine, Marge.
Yeah, you Mark.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Well, great. So, you know, the next thing on the agenda, I just wanted to share with you guys, and I don't know if I ended up emailing it out or not, but maybe I can share a screen just quickly. This new program announcement that came from Maine Housing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have seen this, but
Yeah.
there's $10 million available for single-family subdivisions that are basically for workforce housing. And you know, there's a maximum, you know, I think it's a maximum of $1.4 million per project and $70,000 per lot. But this is kind of a big deal. It's not going to work everywhere. And I think it's probably best suited for kind of a bigger mixed income development. That has some market rate houses and some workforce houses. But this could turn into a decent tool to help us develop and making it affordable. This would turn into essentially a grant for the developers to develop this housing.
Brian, your audio was fading in and out slightly there.
Free money, main state housing, workforce housing.
Brian,
Yeah.
question, would something like this work for the Downs? Say they had, because I thought that
Yes.
at
it would.
one point they were looking at doing, I don't know, it was tiny houses or small houses or something.
Yeah, this would work for them, Jean Marie. I think there's a $1.4 million per project limit. And I think it's 70,000 per lot limit. That's from what I remember. But yeah, it's looks like a pretty cool program, and it's a lot more generous and useful than past programs have been
Right.
for this type of thing.
Can you forward that email to us?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll do that after the meeting, Bill.
No, that'd be helpful.
Hmm.
I have to talk to Rocky this week on other business, so I could send it to him.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think coming from you would be real helpful, Bill.
Yeah.
Tom, there's a couple of affordable deals that are in progress. I wonder if we could just get an update on those.
Yeah, I had hoped Eric would be here. I didn't do my homework on the Avesta project. This is the 31 senior, I think they're 1 bedrooms at the former public safety building. I believe they did secure main housing funding this last round, late last fall. I'll confirm that back out, but I believe they did secure funding. The project in general is right on the cusp of opening up Rosemont Market and Harbor Fish, and there's a gym and some other uses. So I think by the middle of March, they'll be open with those. And the back left corner of that lot is designated for that Avesta project. Jocelyn Place is much further along. In fact, I've been in communications with South Portland Housing quite recently regarding the $200,000 grant that this committee and the council approved. And then I believe they're closing on their financing this month and hope to be under construction this spring. So things are moving along nicely. And just to remind you, that's, I believe, 60 units of affordable, senior affordable housing.
That's terrific.
Then with respect to the Downs, I should do a more complete analysis here. This is kind of off the top of my head, but there are 13 combination of single family homes and condos in our town program that have restrictions against their deed. One of which is already sold to a second owner. And then there's a building that's being occupied as we speak. I think they're taking new residents in right now. This is the first building on your left as you go in off Route 1. The name escapes me, Michaela. You might recall what the project name is.
I think it's the Uplands.
Yeah, Uplands. That sounds right. So
Yeah.
there'll be 2 buildings. The first of which is up and taking residents as we speak. The other one, I think the foundation work is underway. So based on their construction schedule, I would suspect that would be 12 to 18 months out before they take occupants there. And so the Downs is actually quite a bit ahead in terms of what they've built to date. They do have a 10% inclusionary requirement. And I think they've kind of banked some based on, in particular, this affordable housing project that Developers Collaborative is doing. They're talking about moving into the town center portion of the project, and there's a project that they're talking with. It's for it's affordable housing, but for those disabled. And I forget the name of the company, but Corey Fellows, someone that you might know, he's a town resident. He is working with this company. And we want to hear more about it, but they're proposing a fairly premium lot for this use, right in the town center. So it looks as though they're progressing nicely toward their affordable housing goals. The other thing I'll just relate as a practical matter, the Downs comes and reports to us every year. They did most recently early last fall, and at that time they reported that of all the units they built, based on their math, and I'll have to trust them on this, 38 of them actually qualify as a practical matter for affordable, and something about 57% actually qualify under basically 120% or less of AMI, so would qualify for workforce. Again, there's no deed restriction that will guarantee that, but I thought that was an interesting observation on their part, that they're actually exceeding, as a practical matter, those standards, and hopefully that trend continues.
That's terrific.
So that's an example of developers building to the market, but as a practical matter, they still would fit within our guidelines, if you will. And that's something we're talking about. I think this committee's kicked around quite a bit through the years. The deed restriction is great. It's the way to assure the unit stays affordable into the future. It is a devil to administer and confusing for the homeowner. But these units that, for whatever reason, are practically affordable or workforce housing, will more than likely tend to trend continually in that direction. They're not likely to change in the market, so to speak. Again, there's no legal assurance. And I see Brian smiling.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of that. Remember, this is the habitat model. They don't, beyond the first 10 years or so, they don't have a restriction in perpetuity.
Tom, I think about Munjoy Hill when I hear people say that, though, which, used to, as I understand it, not be a very nice area of Portland, and now I think.
Hey, that's where my family's from.
Well, as I understand it, used to be fairly affordable, and now I don't think any of us could afford a place.
No.
Like that.
No.
So
But you take what you can get. That took a century for that to happen, Brian.
All right, so we'll all be gone by then, Tom.
No, but I'm just saying to provide some affordability for some decades anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just observing there's limitations to what we can do.
Well, yeah, because you want to be careful of private property rights too with people,
Yeah,
but
there's
people-
established
but if people-
mechanisms though, that work.
What's that, Brian?
There's established mechanisms though that work without.
Oh,
infringement.
yeah, no. And if people know going in that this is why you're able to get this house at this price,
Yeah.
I mean, again, not to use myself, but that first Main State Housing, if I wasn't there for, I think it was 7 years, I had to pay back the buy down, whatever that was. And fortunately, I built enough equity in my house that I could do that. But, there was a lien pretty much on my house, a secondary lien that had to be paid before I could sell the house to pay back Main State Housing. So,
FHA had the same thing.
yeah, that's right. I mean, it's conundrum. It really is. It's great that, properties are worth as much as they are, but geez, it's tough. It's really tough for I call them my kids. That's the old teacher in me. But my first time home buyers who, oh my God, they just can't get into the market anywhere in Greater Portland. It's nuts. And they're competing against boomers like me, downsizing their houses, cashing out with big bucks and have all this cash. But everyone wants the same house. Isn't that right, Michaela? They all want the small houses with the, you know, this and that. It's like, and no one was building them for the longest time. The builders were all building the McMansions, you know, with the 4 or 5 bedrooms and
Yep.
2.5 baths. And now people don't want those anymore. So, well, I shouldn't say that. I just put one under contract for 100,000 over asking price in Scarborough. Crazy.
You're creating a problem, Jean Marie.
I know, but I'm just saying, and I have like,
So,
I have
all
like
right.
7 offers. It's like, are you
You're
kidding
very-
me?
Yeah, so let's refocus and we'll get back on the agenda. So Tom, thanks for the update on those deals in progress.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, it's a big question, right? Do we want to regulate? Do we want to count on getting lucky? Do we want to hope everything just rises together and falls together? But Tom, you're the thing that you didn't say, but you said without saying it, is it's a question that keeps coming up. So I think it's kind of worth getting kind of a unified philosophy as a group and then acting on it.
Well, can we look at what other towns are doing too? And, you know, so you're not just reinventing the wheel. Have you guys done that?
I mean, the other than the towns that have a housing authority, it doesn't seem like we're doing much, but we're doing more than our peers.
Okay.
And I think unless we create that sort of system, and I don't necessarily recommend we do, I think we'll continually be challenged in this regard.
Yeah.
Is Rocky making his reports now in the fall, annually?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we mutually agreed to push that from a spring report out to a late summer, early fall.
Okay.
There's better data, updated values and such at that point. So I think it works better. We're on a good cycle at this point.
Yeah, I agree. April 1 was too tight for a spring report.
Yeah, the assessor doesn't have all the values understood at that point.
So, Tom, do you want to pop to the next agenda item? And I don't know if there's a discussion here or if it's just an update on the procedures for sales of the affordable units.
Yeah, we've gone through one. I think we started to kind of dissect or debrief on that. I don't know that we need to go back through the details, but there were certainly some lessons learned. The one thing I'd like to do, and Brian and I talked offline, for my own benefit and for whoever comes after me, because inevitably these units will sell and whoever sits in my chair, the phone will ring and they'll say, well, what do we do now? The agreement has some fairly detailed instructions, but what we learned in practice, it doesn't compute perfectly well. And so I think we want to document what we did the first time and start to set a bit of a precedent to make sure we're consistent going forward in how we handle these, because there's a lot of decision points you can make. And so I think Brian's agreed to help me kind of put together a page or two that will come in the file that can be referred to when these inquiries come forward. Just late last week, I got another inquiry. This woman, she's in Mill Commons, one of the condos. She's not quite ready, but she's starting to educate herself on what it takes to sell. So, we could see, 2 more next week for all I know.
Mhm.
And Tom, as you remember, was that kind of exclusively a broker interface type of experience, or will there be some lender interface as well? And the reason I ask is if I'm thinking about who we can get some input from externally, as we work on this.
It was mostly broker, and it was not from my perspective, a great experience. I mean, I don't necessarily fault the broker, but she was totally unfamiliar with how these work, and she was interested in knowing particulars of what can I list it for, what can I ultimately sell it for, and those seem like simple questions, but they ended up being far more complicated than I ever appreciated, frankly. In the end, what we ended up doing in terms of deciding and approving the sale in the final instance was that the buyer, based on the terms of the deal, and it was a much higher price than we had originally advised her, the unit was still affordable to that buyer, just barely, but she was still just below the 80% AMI. And right or wrong, that was the final decision point in terms of approving the sale.
Right.
But the build up to that was very complicated. The agreement goes into some great detail about the town advising, and I'll get the terminology wrong, but advising the homeowner what the maximum sales price is, which, you know, is often confused with the list price and so on and so forth. In the end, I think the broker actually listed it for more than we advised, and the final deal was much more than we advised. But for that buyer, the unit was affordable. And I don't, you know, we talked early on that there would be a fear that they would kind of game the system and wait for the right buyer that had kind of the maximum buying power. I don't think that happened in this case. You know, it was a hot market and there were a lot of offers, but I think it all worked out just fine. But certainly lessons learned that I want to make sure we document and learn from. And I think at the very least, we need to have consistency, whether it's me or anyone else, going forward. There's the potential for a huge windfall profit, depending on what decisions we make here.
True.
So if this other unit comes through, I would like to use this group maybe as a sounding board to kind of walk through the agreement, walk through the different steps, and provide the required advice to the homeowner.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Great. All right, then, Tom, you're in the hot seat again. I think the last time we almost had a meeting, we got bumped because there was a workshop from town council
Right.
about the GMO exemption request. And it felt like that might have a little relevancy for us. So I just wonder if you could just give
Yeah. So let me give you a little bit of
update.
history. Yeah, let me provide some history for context. I'm forgetting what year we're in. We're in 2022. So late 21, no, late 20, November 20, we actually, for the first time ever, ran out of our growth permits. And the development community was understandably concerned. They had projects, you know, either in the pipeline or underway, and they couldn't get building permits. So we did some quick work around to accommodate kind of the short-term need, and the council committed to reevaluating and putting in place a new growth management ordinance that had survived for about 20 years, pretty much untouched. In doing so, the council very considerably changed the game. And that game change affects the Downs the most because it's the project of the largest magnitude and has, you know, itself put unique and different unexpected pressure on the number of growth permits that we allow every year. So part of the accommodation, knowing that we changed the rules, is the council created a separate exemption process whereby a developer would come forward to the town council and would need to demonstrate so-called public benefit in support of their request to be exempt in part or in whole from the ordinance. And so, not surprisingly, in late October this year, the Downs folks came forward and have requested an exemption for a 90-acre plot. It's basically the town center and some of the surrounding areas. And we've been working kind of slowly, methodically. We've hired our own consultants to help try to understand what that request is and to get to a point where the council can grant some level of exemption. I can safely say that the council's not going to grant what they've asked for. It's too broad and too big an area and too much unknown. But there does appear to be some alignment, Jean Marie, I'd say, and some agreement that that some level of exemption is appropriate. And I should have prefaced this by saying that the lead argument, which we conceptually agree with, is that a key ingredient of a successful, vibrant town center has to have people living in it or close by it. And that's almost an undeniable fact. And our consultants have helped us really better understand that and generally agree with that. The devil's in the details, of course. You know, how much is too much or how much is enough to support that vibrancy. So this really amounts to a negotiation of sorts. And as I said, the public benefit is the key piece here. They put forward a number of public benefits. We've just starting to counter and help further refine or define those public benefits and probably add some more to the table. But the sorts of things we're talking with them about are space for a community center, space for a school site potentially, that, you know, really preserving that option for a different day. Help me out, Jean Marie. Trying to think what the other big public benefits are. Oh, there's a town square, kind of a civic area. I'm not sure what the town's interest by way of ownership or governance, if you will be, but I think that's a critical piece to the town. So they've done a lot of good design work in the last 6 weeks or so, which have helped everyone understand at least their vision. And I think there's some alignment there as well.
Yeah.
So long story short, we're inching toward this. And I would say in the next 60 days or so, I think we probably should be through it. I can't exactly predict where we are, but I think there is a path forward.
I would agree with that. And talking to my fellow counselors, and I agree with Tom, it's not going to be just a carte blanche. Oh yeah, go build whatever you want as fast as you want. But there will be something worked out that makes sense for everybody. I think it'll be a real win-win. It should be anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Their request, though it's based on 90 acres, it is limited to multifamily and mixed-use buildings. That's an important feature that I glossed over.
Yeah.
And we've got some pretty good analysis. We've got some experience now with those types of dwelling units in appreciating the cost to serve them, whether it's schools or plowing the streets or demand on the library and public safety. And in fact, those housing types, multifamily, particularly 2-bedroom or less, are fairly favorable in that regard. But that's just part of the conversation we're having with them.
When I heard this was all happening, I've always thought that the town would benefit from 1- and 2-bedroom units in a multifamily setting. And so that sounds like one of the elements of negotiation. Tom, what's the mixed use element that you referenced?
Well, because a big chunk of this 90 acres is this town center, which is envisioned as a mixed use area where there's restaurants and office and commercial uses along with residential and civic space. Some of those buildings will have those non-residential uses on the first or second floor or somewhere in the building, so they're not exclusively residential.
Gotcha. Okay.
Tom, are there any existing exclusions? Like, is affordable already excluded from GMO?
Yeah. It is. Yep.
And I got in that thing for 10 permits for workforce housing as part of the GMO, that they are not part of the number. That if you're building workforce priced housing, then there's 10 permits set aside for those outside of the other.
And the conundrum the developer faces, and Brian, you probably know this far better than any of us, is that they are on the cusp. They need to secure financing for this next kind of unknown phase. They're moving, there's certain things they know how to do and they do them well. But this town center is a different thing. And the pandemic has sent office and retail kind of sideways, or it's squirrely at the very least, or very best. And so there's a fair amount of risk that they're about to take. And, when they're building higher density and more vertical, they're building 40, 50, 60 units under a roof. And so they can't even build one building with the current constraints of our growth management ordinance. So there's some real practical challenges. And Bill will recall this. Bill and I sat across the table from these guys far more than I care to remember, negotiating the original credit enhancement agreement. And at that time, they were asking for a full exemption for the growth management ordinance. So they've been remarkably consistent on this point.
It's true.
And we said, no way, that's a non-starter. We'll never get this through.
Yeah, we did.
So we're partners. We need to remind ourselves of that all too often, it seems. Their success is our success. And so I do think that there is some political alignment starting to happen, and I think there is a path forward. The devil will be in the details, though.
10% of the housing would, by ordinance, be affordable housing?
Overall. So that's what I said. They're actually probably have some in the bank. They've built about 400 units. I think they have something like 70 affordable right now. So they're already ahead of the game.
So this wouldn't necessarily be an element of the deal that you have to have 10% of this X number of units
No,
as affordable.
no,
Could
unless,
be if you want.
unless we, want to make that additional requirement on them. But I think that's too limiting. I think it's challenging for them to build. Well, I don't know this. I don't want to speak for them, but their standard is that they need to be at full build out, at least 10% affordable units. And they're between what I've heard as high as 3,000 units by the time they're built out.
Workforce housing owners have to populate the same restaurants and coffee shops and downtown shopping as anybody else. So
Yep.
If that was thrown in, Jean Marie, that wouldn't be a bad thing.
No, and I don't disagree with you on that at all. And I know people they throw affordable and workforce out, using them interchangeably, but they're two separate building types, in my opinion. You got affordable, but then workforce is I call it the missing middle, so to speak. And I will tell you that in my conversations with members of the Chamber of Commerce of Portland, for example, they're desperate. A lot of these employers are desperate for so-called workforce housing because they have a lot of workers and whatever who make more than could get them into affordable housing, but they don't make enough to get into regular rentals, just rentals or houses. I mean, so that's a huge missing factor in this area in Greater Portland, and it's an economic development issue, to be honest with you.
Well, and there were some unintended consequences of this Green New Deal in Portland.
Oh yeah.
It really put an absolute freeze or hold on all residential construction in Portland. Brian, you might know more about that than I do.
I just know it's there's a lot of unintended consequences.
Yep.
I'll leave it at that.
Well, good luck with it.
Gee, thanks, Bill. Good luck with that. No.
So the second to last thing on the agenda came from some late night Instagram scrolling that I was doing recently. And I found this graphic of, I think this was the Scarborough real estate market. Maybe this was Facebook scrolling, not Instagram scrolling. And let me share the screen real quick. Let me share the right screen. There we go. So this was as of February 9th. The number of, I guess this was homes for sale and the price points of those homes.
Staggering.
Right. So nothing under 400 grand, 9 houses between 400 and 499. 9 between 500,000 and 700,000, 8 between 700 and a million, and nothing over a million. I thought, oh wow, that's interesting. That seems like it might be relevant for the things that we do with this committee. And it was a nice, pretty picture. And then I got a little geeky and curious, and I made a little spreadsheet. And I said, geez, what does this mean for affordability for workforce housing? And so I plucked some income information, and I'm pretty sure this is right. But these are based on Portland MSA incomes. So this is the 80% area median income for a family of 4, and the 120% of area median income for a family of 4. And then I did some calculations based on the tax rate in Scarborough for a house at each of these price points. Made some assumptions about utilities and insurance. And then kind of went through the same calculations we do with our affordability worksheet. Just to get an idea of, what this tells us about, the market for people in this workforce housing band of things. And it was pretty interesting to me. It kind of came down to this final table of, to be able to buy houses that are on the market right now, how much of a down payment would you need if you were getting a mortgage that was quote unquote affordable, meaning you're paying 30% of your income towards the mortgage. And the first thing I noticed was that for people at 80% of AMI, for all of these homes that are on the market right now, you need an insane down payment to be able to afford any of them. So I was like, wow, that's wild. And that makes sense because that's why everybody talks about there being a workforce housing problem. But then I looked at the upper end of what we call the workforce housing band. And I said, oh, interesting. For these 18 homes that are, below 700,000, you don't need an insane down payment to be able to have an affordable housing payment. And I thought that was kind of curious.
Is that based on 2.75%?
It is based on a 2.75% more.
Well, that's long gone. That ain't coming back anytime soon.
True,
Right, Michaela?
Yeah, today's is 4.25.
I just about died when you said that. I'm like, holy crap, that's gone up in just 2 weeks.
Right.
Well, he just factored in the 425.
Let's do it this way.
I'm glad you know how to do that math stuff, Brian, because I
Thank
don't know not on these.
All right, so there we go, Jim. So
Okay.
Boy,
yeah.
Yeah.
Just as an aside, just look how dramatic an effect increase in interest rate makes. When you
Yeah,
look at that bottom line,
Yeah.
unbelievable.
crazy.
Affordable housing owners can't afford to live in Scarborough.
No, that's correct.
Workforce, yeah.
Workforce
That's correct.
housing.
That's
Can't afford
absolutely correct.
Cannot afford to live there.
Now look, here's the reality, I think. A lot of people, when you're making whatever these incomes are, maybe you're paying more than 30% of your income
Yeah,
towards your housing. And maybe at these higher incomes, it's less of an issue to pay more than 30% of your income towards your housing because you've got enough actual dollars to spend on the other necessities of life.
except that the lenders won't go above those. Well, they're what do they call them? LTIs, the loan to value, LTV, excuse me, loan to value.
Yeah. So I thought, it was interesting to me anyways, to see kind of
Yeah.
what this snapshot of the market really meant for people. And I thought that the down payment was kind of a really important metric that I think keeps a lot of people out of the market.
Oh, I would agree 100%.
Okay, before we move on, I would like to officially tell you guys that today is my last meeting.
Oh, no.
Oh,
What are
yes.
you up to?
You're out of order. You're out of order, Marge. Not accepted.
We're going to be doing more traveling. I just, I guess I want to actually enjoy my retirement now that I'm in my mid 70s. It's like,
Hey,
Anyway.
you got to enjoy it now. Jump
Well,
while
yeah,
you can.
there's a sign down here at one of the RVs, and it says adventure before dementia.
There you go. Well, Marge, I'm really, really glad that you made it to the meeting tonight, and I'm really glad that you joined the committee whenever it was that you did.
Oh, it was like
and-
5-6 years ago, wasn't it?
And really glad that you were able to serve as chair. There was so much great work that got done while you were chair. You really advanced the work of the committee. So,
Here, here.
on behalf of all of
Yay.
us,
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Marge.
So anyway, so good night to all, and your work is moving forward as it should. And I appreciate all the effort that you will continue to make, I'm sure.
Marge, would you make this
Enjoy your
official?
retirement.
Marge, could you make this official with a quick email to Tony?
Yeah.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
don't
Good
be a
night.
stranger, Marge.
Safe travel.
Marge.
All right. Bye-bye.
Wow, she's been waiting for a spot to say that for 45 minutes.
Oh, that's great. She really made a huge difference as chair and got a lot of stuff done for this committee over the past couple of years. That, when we stagnated for a while, it was really terrific to have her.
She was a taskmaster, I'll tell you.
She really was.
She would crack the whip.
Yep.
We needed it.
Yep. Well, I don't know if anybody else has the agenda handy, but there's only one thing left.
Adjournment.
Yeah. Anybody?
So
wanna make-
move.
So move, seconded.
Oh,
I've got Bill and
Alright.
Dick.
Yes.
any discussion? No. All right. All in favor? Good night, everybody.
Good
night,
Bye.
all.
Thank you all so much.
See you
Be
next
safe
time.
tomorrow.
Night, Brian.
Good night.
Safe.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.